Last week we studied how concepts can be used to persuade us into things. The first one was just a slow, gradual process. The next one had a persuasion system within it, trying to convince somebody that, this game is great, you should play it more, or how to play this game. And then finally, one where, kind of an entrepreneurial idea where, this person gets an idea, they work towards it, and somehow they succeed. Well, I thought we could combine some of the equations and concepts that we're using to talk about religious moments when you're in a convention or another place. And that's what this entire week will be about: is religious moments. I'm feeling kind of weird that I'm using these equations for things that I never use them for anything but one subject, and now I'm using them for others, and I'm like, oh yeah, of course this works. This is amazing. So here we go. The first thing we have to understand is when you're having these moments, they are beyond reality. This was a concept. Hyperreality is a concept thought up in the 1960s, though people had been using it beforehand. The world's fairs all had these same concepts in mind. The Disneyland, places where they were specifically trying to control what you saw and how you saw it and kind of made your mind alter a little. We're trying to do that. Drugs, in some cases, yeah, they were using drugs. But they were specifically using kind of the system where when you're there, reality becomes greater than what it really is. And commercials have used this a little bit. You buy this product not because you like the product, but the emotion that they're promoting for the product. The cool person, the person who feels like everybody likes them, is an advertisement. And so, the people who everybody drink Coke. Yeah, that's totally a part of hyperreality. On the other hand, going into Disneyland, you're like, oh, look, it's Donald Duck. Of course it's Donald Duck. He's in Disneyland. This is Disneyland. And, of course he's some guy talking to me. And look, there's Snow White. Of course she's here. Even though Snow White doesn't exist. This is an actress. And I fully acknowledge in the back of my head, this is an actress just portraying this person. Hi. Go away. We're still left with the concept, the idea that we still know it's back of our mind. We go, it's not real, but our conscious self says it doesn't matter. This is real. I believe it to be real, and this goes into a thing where if something has the same goal as a video game, it will be very similar to a video game. There is a book series called Level Up, and it's by the author of this little website that you're looking at. And he creates a nice little system. I read his book for a study on video games, and that's when I was going to recommend the book. That's why it's not in the recommendations, simply because the subject really hasn't come up yet. But it's come up now, so here is a website and a wonderful little advertisement talking about how Disneyland and video games often work in the same reality. And the reason why is they have the same goals, and they kind of view the person going in as almost a player, even though it's very separate. You have the same thing happening in road systems. Seattle, there are points where it's very obvious that somebody who's studied video games has looked at things and kind of applied ideas to it. The same works in conventions and other places. Just the floors themselves, they've thought about, okay, the walkway, and we want to get people through, but we want them to kind of pause at places. And so that same concept is taught from Disneyland to conventions to other places where it becomes a game that's in real life. There is a counter to it called gamatization, where they use specific ideas and they turn it into a game, and that's a very different thing. But because they're specifically doing this to do it that way, or they're specifically changing the goals so that it fits within what they want. But a real life game is like Cub Scouts, where all the rule or all the requirements. There we go. Fit within the same system you would give for a video game. You just have to make a narrative out of it, and suddenly you're there. My scouts don't realize that they're fulfilling all of these requirements, because instead of telling them they're fulfilling requirements, I'm telling them they're becoming great warriors, and we're off to battle. And you know what? I've gotten into a lot of safety questions about how to make things safe when they want to battle each other. They made up an entire real life board game just because that's safer. I'll have to make a video series on that for a week. You'll love it. Anyway, on to the next subject. So the reason why we accept that Snow White, who is only in a cartoon, is talking to us is we have something called the rule of cool, because we've put so much emotion into liking this subject that the disconnect and the acceptance can be higher than it would be in other situations. The same way with cosplay, you like it the same amount as beforehand. It's just you've put a lot more emotion into the concept that what you're wearing is also you. Same works for the people dressed as Snow White. As soon as they get off stage, they're like, oh, I'm not Snow White anymore. I'm going to be normal. And then kind of they have this weird personality quirk. It's kind of fun. I've talked to some folks about that. It's kind of cool to watch. But the rule of cool actually has a counter to it, and that is called rejection. And this comes up in intercultural history a lot, especially when we're talking about equalization or dominance theory, where these two groups might be working together, or they might consider one to be over the other, and then suddenly something happens and it doesn't work that way anymore, and their emotional state, their liking of the subject drops, and they dislike it, and their acceptance of it doesn't drop as much. So suddenly they go from totally cool with the subject to no, this is wrong, and it becomes very difficult to unreject it because they've already put all this emotion into it. And you have to have a major moment to have the rejection. You have to have a moment where you have a heightened emotional state there, another form of hyperreality, I guess. I don't know. I'm going to have to, think about it and, look it up and stuff. But rejection is very common when you study intercultural history. The Japanese considered themselves equal to Europeans until the League of Nations rejected them and said that you are not equal to us. And that is right when the Japanese started to go ultra nationalistic and say, who do these idiots think they are? We're going to take over the world. And the only people that accepted us are Germany, so we're going to be friends with Germany. And yeah, rejection happened, and it created a monster. The same thing happened with, multiple things in war and stuff. And, it is difficult for them to kind of face that because suddenly their emotion won't allow them to find this equalization. The rejection has happened. You have to forgive, and that is difficult to do. Anyway, let's put these equations together. The equation that you've been seeing works within another equation on how we use our conscious points through over our health and our emotional joy. So the bottom of the previous equation kind of helps out explaining the emotional stresses that we go through. And I don't know how it works with emotional stress. And oh, hey, Mac-Andre Gutierrez, you're in my video now. You're YouTube famous. No, he's not. Nobody watches my videos. And I'm sort of wondering how the emotional stress and anxiety works within the equation, but I don't think I can do that a proper study. I'm going to have to do the maths and try to figure it out to the best of my abilities later on. But right now, it just adds. You take every emotional stress that you have within your conscious and unconscious self, and then add them together, and that is your ES. And then you have your emotional joy, and that is all the things that cause joy for you added together, and that causes, emotional joy, which allows you to deal with more stress and anxiety and priorities a lot better. So that's one of the reasons why you feel kind of giddy when you're at Disneyland, because you're suddenly getting all this extra emotional joy because Donald Duck is right there and it's Mickey Mouse. And oh my gosh, I'm really talking like a kid. I have not been to Disneyland since I was 4, and yet I still want to go. I fully acknowledge that it's going to be different, but but then we put it all together, and that becomes the priority. The things that you will consciously that you will look at, and how you look at it. And this is actually not all added together. This is all evened out and put into one priority. What takes priority, and this is all the priority that we're going to give out, and then how it's banded out is another equation by John Nash. It's called the Nashian Bridge, and you can look that up all you want if you're looking up game theory, not MatPat, actual game theory. MatPat is cool. It's just he's not the one who came up with game theory, if you know what I mean. But with this, you can see how people can kind of manipulate a place to make you feel extra memories, and that's where we come into our last part of the subject, is an extreme emotional response, whether it be good or bad, can cause changes in your memory. The greater the heightened liking for the subject, the more likely you're going to remember it, until it reaches a point where it overwhelms everything you have and you actually faint. People who are just so overwhelmed at their wedding that they faint. Or people who, weddings. Or seeing a good friend and finding that this friend is still, their amazing friend. You can actually have moments where you're weak. You're just so happy. And that's what's causing, the problem. Or, you're just overwhelmed. And so your brain can't quite function, and your body kind of slumps a little. And, it creates this absolutely perfect memory in your mind. But the opposite can happen, and instead of creating a memory, it actually erases itself. You have an extreme emotional moment, but it's a terrible thing, and it creates a lot of emotional stress, and there is no emotional joy to take care of it. Your brain will actually forget the moment. We've all had things like this, a scary dream. You just can't remember it. I was once hit by a motorhome. I can't remember it at all. I can't remember a certain friend's face, even though I knew her really well. I once fell off a cliff, and for the life of me, the next 15 minutes after that, I can't remember. And I literally did not know what was going on. I climbed back up, and I was talking to folks, and I was like, oh yeah, I'm looking for such and such. Have you seen him? And this lady's like, oh yeah, he passed by 20 minutes ago. And I'm just like, what? What are you talking about? I just saw him. He was just right there. What? And I just simply couldn't remember that I had fallen off the cliff and I had just climbed back up. And it took me years to realize what had happened. I can't remember falling at all. I just remember going, wow, that was a really stressful period. And, that's what happens is your brain just goes, nope, we can't deal with this. This will not do. So we will not allow it to be in there. It might still be in there. I've been told by a psychologist that sometimes it is still in there, and it causes a lot of difficulties for people. Your fear of dogs. Until you have an emotional moment where dogs are no longer scary to you, but loving, you will continue to fear dogs, even though you can't remember why. this is just a part of life. On the other hand, you will always love something, and you may not remember why, but it just the very sight of it just makes you go, oh, suddenly I have joy just because I saw that, or I smelled this, and oh, it just swarms with memories. And that's the thing, the more priority we give to a subject, the more likely we're going to remember it. It doesn't matter if it's a good or bad thing. But if we don't give it a lot of priority, we're very likely going to forget it. So somebody, when we're going to go through a couple moments, you can go through a very, very fast moment, but because you've given so much priority to that moment, you can remember it in slow motion. And while this is happening, you go like, I remember all these details and stuff. But if somebody were to say, lift up a number, you would not remember that number because your priority is on those memories itself. The things that you remember are all that you could are everything that your body was allowing you to see. And it wasn't going in slow motion. Your brain was just giving it a super, super, super priority. That's why when people are being shot at, they can like watch the bullets pass by them and they're like, how on earth is that possible? And it's like, well, do you remember anything else around that? Did you remember, let's say, the stick to your left? And the answer is, of course not. Why would they remember that when there's a bullet passing by them? Their systems of priority take over from that state. And you can see how this works and how this becomes an important thing. So the next two videos, I think, are going to be about how we have these kind of moments in our minds. And I'm going to bring up the religiosity of conventions. We've already talked about them a bit, but I want to, give an exact equation for those moments where the person goes through kind of this hyper reality where they meet somebody dressed as somebody and they kind of connect with them because of that character and how it works within their mind. And holy crap, I deserve some kind of PhD on this, but I don't know who would give it to me. But yeah, we're going to be discussing that pretty soon. And anybody who wants to do some studies on this, I am fully willing to talk to you. I honestly want to talk to you because I've shown these equations to other friends and stuff, and they're like, yeah, this is beyond my skill. And that's becoming a problem because, I want to talk about it. Know what I mean? I've been working on this for years. And now I can use it for non-terrible subjects. So I fully want to hear what you have on the subject. So this week should be fun, but you're going to see a lot of equations. I'm sorry for that, but hopefully the equations have been explained in the last 2 weeks enough that it won't hurt you too much to go through them. Thank you very much, and catch you all later.